The Witch from Mercury is not a Gundam show, and that's a good thing. Well, to clarify, it is a Gundam show, but it just breaks the traditional format that Gundam shows usually uses and does something different. And gosh darn it, is it a darn good show. When you watch a Gundam show, you expect interplanetary conflict and military warfare. You think of dark, mature themes and the brutal consequences of warfare cranked up to an 11. The start of Witch from Mercury definitely feels like a change from all the angst, but don't you get fooled now. Because the show still does have these elements, and we even get hints of it throughout the show, and it even ramps up like crazy towards the end of the season, and the show executes them quite brilliantly. Especially in the prologue, which I want to talk about briefly because the prologue sets up the show really well. Delling Rembrandt raiding Mercury, killing everyone and burning the place to the ground sets up his character really well as someone who has strong opinions on Gundams, because of the curse they bear on its pilots. Alongside that, the show does a brilliant job of emotionally tying this event to the suffering that Suletta's mother, Prospera, experiences. Suletta and her mother are left as the sole survivors of their home planet, with the only ties to Mercury being their Gundam Ariel. It gets even more tragic when you think about how Suletta, a literal child, activates Ariel, a robot that's built for violence. There's quite a painful contrast there between the brutality of the situation she's in and her innocence, which is reflected through this child just blowing up other mobile suits and her thinking it's just some kind of firework display. There are so many layers of disturbing narratives in this prologue alone that matches the dark themes of a typical Gundam show. Think of the prologue as like an appetizer, you just get a taste of what's to come. And boy do they do a great job of taking their time with getting there. The start and the majority of season 1 is where Witch from Mercury really steps away from the war, blood, gore, and adult drama. It's a bit of a departure from the Gundam tradition, and instead turns into more of a high school teenage drama. They really lean into this tone while subtly including the adult drama involving the corporate parents, which bolsters the teenage character storylines who are the main focus of the show. And oh my goodness, do they do a phenomenal job in writing this show. Usually when established franchises change the formula, it always ends badly. Think of the Mass Effect games or the Star Wars franchise. Those two ain't looking too hot right now. Which is why I give Gundam the Witch from Mercury so much praise, because they have competent writers and they nailed their landing. Because this teenage high school drama of these spoiled kids having daddy issues is all just a misdirection to the real drama of the show towards the end of the season. And ooh, is it a really good payoff. But don't get it twisted, all of that misdirection doesn't mean that the first 10 episodes were just fluff. Because despite being a Gundam show and the severe depression that comes along with that title, at the core of this show is a character-driven story about the relationship of Suletta Mercury and Miorina Rembrandt. And I'm using the term relationship quite loosely because the show really does leave it up to interpretation for us, the audience, to form an opinion on if the relationship is simply platonic or something deeper. But that's completely beside the point. The point is the show's strongest element is how careful and how well it built and developed Suletta and Miorina's relationship over the course of the season. This relationship is the backbone of the show. Without their well-written relationship, The Witch from Mercury will just be a standard mecha warfare anime. Every story beat and character decisions all lead to them. The show really takes advantage of all 12 episodes and fully investing in these two characters not just as a pair, but as individuals who had strong character arcs that served as the show's foundation for a strong cohesive story. Both of these characters start off with a push and pull dynamic and couldn't be more opposite of each other even if they tried. Miorina is someone who is spoiled to an extent. She's a bit of a gaslight gatekeep girl boss herself, and cares for her own self-interests first, and honestly for pretty good reasons. Because she is the daughter of Delling Rembrandt, the president of the Benerit Group, a major business conglomerate, but most importantly, he is a certified father. Ignore your child because your work is more important? Check. Spoil her every now and then because she is still your bloodline? Yeah, we got that. And most importantly, control her life without her consent? We got a bingo! I honestly can't help but feel bad for Miorina, man. She just got the full daddy issue experience. But what I think The Witch from Mercury does really well is how they break relationship cliches. Instead of playing the typical damsel in distress role, Miorina instead takes matters into her own hands by trying to escape and get away from her father's authority and live an independent life. Then you have Suletta, a selfless girl who comes from humble beginnings, and is the daughter of Prospera Mercury, a certified mother. Blatantly lie to your child? Check. Manipulate your child so she craves your attention and do everything he says? Yep, we're just going from one parent issue to another. Suletta is someone who wants to be relied on and wants to take responsibility because these are the values that her mother taught her. This wanting to bear responsibility is also one of the themes of the show that becomes more and more prominent as you continue to watch the show, and I feel like a broken record saying this, but man did they execute it well. The Witch from Mercury does a fantastic job at portraying high school teenagers acting like teenagers. They're all angsty, bratty, anxious, rebellious, and spoiled. We have teenage characters acting like actual teenagers in an anime. You don't get that too often, so savor it while you can. The other characters complement the story of Suletta and Miorine's story really well too. Guel's downfall is quite unfortunate. In a lot of ways, his story is the opposite of Miorine's. Both start with daddy issues, but Miorine has an upward trend in her life. She meets her husband who does anything for her, gains friends with the Earth people, and starts a company, which leads to her building a lukewarm relationship with her dad that led to the payoff of Delling protecting his daughter at the end. Guel starts at the same point as Miorine, but his life goes down the drain. He got repeatedly embarrassed by Suletta, got his school privileges revoked by his pops, then get forced to leave school and become a blue-collar worker that goes by the name of Bob. And all of this happened because he was a major pussy. Then when he finally decided to stand up for himself, he shits himself inside his mech and almost dies, and then unknowingly killed his father. The righteous may just be the biggest Guel hater, probably. Like, this guy suffered enough, man, just leave him alone. Then you have Shadiq, who's an orphan with a high level of maturity for his age, and feels like he owes his dad his loyalty and does whatever he asks for the benefit of the Benerit group. But the responsibility he wants to bear isn't just so he can be a worthy heir to replace Sarius Zenali one day. It's also because of his desire to win over Miorine. He wanted to prove that no, I'm not like the other boys who do well to be your husband. He refuses to take part of that nonsense. It would instead win her over by being a functioning member of society. But what Miorine wanted from the very beginning was someone who would protect her and not treat her like a prize to be won. So welcome, Brother Shadiq, to the Cuckoldry Club. Then there's Nika, who secretly works with Shadiq and gives him communication and access to the Urshan terrorist group to do his bidding, and that conflict in season 2 is gonna bang so hard if they write this well. Then you have the last boy Ellen, who still has so many mysteries. But what we do know from season 1 is that he works for Pale Technologies, and like the Grassley house, both want Ariel. And he tries to achieve this by seducing the main character. All three of the boys in some way work for their parents' affection, and in Ellen's case, for the weird science nuns. The character-driven stories from all the teenagers all lead to the adults' conflicts, with the Grassley and Jetrick house wanting Delling dead because of his tyrannic leadership, along with the Pale house and Grassley house wanting to know Prospera and Ariel's secrets. All of the characters and storylines were set up throughout the season for an orgasmic payoff. They were all connected and interwoven with each other. Everything led to the first major crack in Miorine and Soletta's relationship, with the attack on Delling, the death of Vim Jetrick, and the attempted capture of Ariel all being a misdirection. Because all of these events' purpose was instead to start breaking down Miorine and Soletta's relationship. It feels simple at surface level when you're just watching the show, but there's so many moving parts that wouldn't work at all if it weren't for how amazingly written Soletta and Miorine's relationship is. These two are like oil and water when it comes to their personality, and the show leans into that dynamic to set themselves up for a well-established and beautifully developed relationship. They almost felt destined for each other the moment they met. Despite not wanting to be a damsel in distress, Soletta still swoops in to be Miorine's knight in shining armor, much to her demise. And even despite Miorine being an absolute brat, Soletta, being the sheltered and innocent girl that she is by Miorine's side every time, and over time, Miorine finally warms up and reciprocates Soletta's help. These are by each other's side at every victory, whether that's after a duel or after successfully starting a company or whatever the hell rich kids do. Their struggles are also related to the other person, whether it's Miorine's feud with her dad and Guel, or her company being cockblocked by Brother Shadiq, because he himself got cockblocked by Chad Soletta. Or with Soletta's anxiety from feeling unwanted, which in my opinion has the second best payoff in the show and is so well done when you factor in that she is a sheltered innocent child. Again, these are real teenage emotions, guys. Soletta wants to be relied on, and when she feels that everyone is doing well without her help, she feels down naturally. That's a natural feeling for a 17-year-old. And who comes to be her knight in shining armor this time? That's right, her tsundere wife, who reminds her that it is because of Soletta and her saying that she moves forward. It's because of Soletta that she's happy and doesn't want to run away anymore, even if she has to listen to her father's advice for their company. Soletta makes her change from the entitled selfish princess to a savvy, responsible CEO. This scene really took their relationship to its highest. They're at the summit, you know, they're at the peak of their relationship, they're at the tippy top. And like with most normal relationships, everything goes wrong after this moment, because oh man, do things get tragic after this moment. Immediately after this scene, they get attacked by a terrorist group, which separates Miorine from Soletta and puts her and her father in a compromised situation, with Delling putting his body on the line, putting him in a critical condition to save Miorine from any shrapnel stabbing her. And then you have Soletta, who's giddy as a child from getting Ariel back. She comes in time with all her chivalrous qualities to rescue her bride by squashing this dude like a fly. Now there's a Gundam I know. I cannot have enough good things to say about this cliffhanger. Number one, because it isn't like the Firefly and we actually get a next season, but also because of the implications that it dropped. Not only does it make Suletta look like a cold-blooded killer on a surface level, but it also reveals that, number one, there's something deeper yet to be revealed about Suletta's character that we and possibly Suletta doesn't even know about, that she's not just a blissfully ignorant, happy-go-lucky girl. Number two, Suletta's mother Prospera, who is hinted to be incredibly shady throughout the show, is now really up to some FBI shit. And number three, it will inevitably fracture Suletta and Miorine's relationship moving forward. I mean, just imagine being in Miorine's shoes for a second. You were on the verge of death one moment, then your potential killer gets squashed by a bug by your groom who looks totally unfazed. I mean, that's just a traumatizing event. This show nailed an ending that makes the audience anxiously anticipating for the second season. The build-up from the dark and bloody tone we get from the prologue to all the slow burn developments of all the characters, rekindling relationships, and inevitable relationship breakdowns all led to the culmination of the dark ending, which will make season 2 a hopefully chaotic and even better sequel to an already great season 1. I guess all that's left now is to mentally prepare myself for the inevitable stress and depression that this show will give me.